To go into further detail on the registration and lockout, to enable the lockout, we hit the Enable Lockout button, and it actually asks you to select a access password. Now, I would highly recommend that this is not too difficult, as if you lock yourself out, it will require some help from either a Topcon technician or a Bourgault technician to get you back into this software. So for simple sake, we'll make an easy password of 1234. Hit enter. It wants you to do it twice, just so that it can't have a missed key when creating the password. So again, enter, lockout enabled. So to show you an example, when the lockout is enabled, you cannot access the options menu. So this will stop you from changing any product lists, any configuration of the tank, any wheel factors, and so on. Now, to get back into that mode where you will be able to change those options, disable lockout. Enter the code that we created, lockout disabled. So then we have full access to the options menu once again. Now, to properly shut down the Borgo software and the X20 at the end of every day, the appropriate or easiest thing to do is actually hold the Borgo sticker in the lower left corner with your thumb with a slight pressure for 5 seconds. That brings up X20 Manager screen is what it's called. A couple things on this screen. This is an easy way to get to the volume level. Obviously, it's going to increase the volume at 100%. You will have an external speaker available to mount in the cab so that this won't have to be maxed out all the time. Screen brightness is also here. The shutdown can be done from this point. If you were to hit the shutdown button, it's going to automatically want to shut down, but it also asks you for a confirmation, so you can't accidentally touch the button and shut down the software when you do not want to do so. Are you sure you want to shut down? Say yes. The machine goes through its proper shutdown, and that is key when shutting down a Windows computer with software on it, so it does the appropriate software shutdown so it starts up properly the next time. Now the next time that it actually gets started up, for example the next morning, just hit the power key once again, does its normal startup. So because the unit was shut down properly, it's going to automatically return to its last known setting and return to the exact same screen that we were at with the Borgo software. So you see all the numbers are exactly the same. It was just like it was never turned off. So to go into more detail of how this screen was set up, we're going to go into the Options button. And so this is the screen where we set everything up to be configured properly to your air seeder. Now, if this was a factory ordered machine and this unit was configured to your tank before it was delivered, all of these settings should be done for you. But to better understand how the system works, we'll review what was done in these settings to make it match your air seeder tank. Now, the first things first, the config tab that is showing, short for configuration. The main lifeline of this X20 to your air tank is through a COM port in the back. So we have to tell the software what COM port to look at where it is connected to the seed rate controller interface that is in your tractor cab. So in this case, I have it on simulation for demonstration purposes, but typically we're going to be connected to the COM3 port, as the COM1 and COM2 are generally used for connecting to your GPS receiver for global positioning tracking. Now, I mentioned earlier the speed source can be one of three options: speed from the seeder, speed from the tractor radar, or speed from the GPS. Typically we want to actually be speed from the seeder. What that does is that measures off a sensor on a rear axle of the air tank, which is riding in the dirt that you are seeding in, so it's the most accurate way to control the air seeder. External switch box, you have the option of using the external switch box provided. Gives you a manual override of any electronic features with a physical toggle switch, and you will have 4 tank switches and a master switch on that switch box, as well as a increase or decrease switch for each tank. So we have to tell the software whether we're using that or not to set the level of priority in the switching systems. So under external switch box, using external switch box or not is just a simple checkbox. If it's populated, it will look at the connection where the switch box should be connected. If it's not, it will not. So typically that's going to be selected. Enable master switch, that is powering the master switch on that switch box to be able to switch the master clutch on and off from there. You can make it so that that switch is actually disabled on its own, but typically that is enabled for all cases. Enable tank switches. This is a more common feature that is exercised by operators. You can disable the tank switches on the switch box so that a operator cannot inadvertently turn off an individual tank by accident. So when it is deselected, you will not have access to turning the auxiliary clutches for each tank on and off on the switch box. When it is selected, it is fully activated. Toggle switch up is on. That is a feature that basically allows different parts of the world to change how those switches work for them. In certain areas, in different countries, up is usually switching the switch down. So this being selected actually allows us to make it more appropriate to the North American market, where usually when you hit a switch up is turning it on. Auto clutch switch enabled. That should be selected if you have a automatic clutch system on your tillage device. It allows the software to look for a signal from that automatic clutch switch and appropriately sets the priority of master clutch switching devices. If you do not have it, it definitely should be unchecked, as it will confuse the software to look for it and it will not find a device. VRC enabled checkbox, that will have to be checked if you are doing any variable rate seeding. And what that does is it allows the optional MapLink software to take over the Borgo seed rate controller. If that is deselected, it will not allow the MapLink software to control the air seeder rate. There is no harm in leaving it selected if you are only periodically doing variable rate seating. It just will stop any permission of MapLink software if it is unchecked. Guidance Master Enabled is referring to the GPS tracking source of an auto clutch type switching. What that does is, if that's checked, it allows the Borgo rate controller to turn on and off automatically if you seed your headlands first, and the guidance program keeps track of that, and it'll automatically switch the master switch off when entering the headland. So that covers this tab. The next tab that we'll go to is the machine. And what this is it allows you to select the exact Borgo machine that you are running with this Topcon X20 controller. So the purpose today, I'm going to switch it here just to a 6450 plus NH3 or liquid. So what that gives us is a 4-compartment air seeder with the NH3 liquid tank as tank 5. You'll see all the specs for each compartment are already in the software to tell it what the capacities are for each compartment.
Maybe you should just say that again, because the intercom was going at the same time.
Oh, okay.
Just where you started.
Yeah.
Just because that's been a problem in the past.
You know what, too? That window is cracked open a bit. If somebody drives by or honks, we're going to hear it as well. Jason went for holidays and left his window open. Okay, so right from, how about I go back to this page? Go to machine. What we're going to do, select a model that is specific to the Borgo seeders. And so what we're going to do is pick out the 6450 plus NH3 or liquid. So we get a 4-tank air seeder with a 5th tank anhydrous or liquid option available. Now the Borgo seed rate controller software has all the specs for each air seeder built into the software, so the controller actually knows all the capacities of each compartment of the air seeder. The tank grouping section over on the right allows you to tell it how you have the machine configured with respect to the interconnect doors between all the compartments in the air seeder. As you know, the Borgo seeders have an exclusive feature in it where you can combine 2 compartments together to meter the same product. So when we refer to tank grouping, we are telling the controller how we have the machine configured physically using those interconnect doors. So right now you'll see no grouping is highlighted. If you select this one directly to the right, it shows 1 plus 2 plus 3 and 4. When you have a number plus another number, the first one is always the one that the metering auger is activated in. The additional numbers are the ones that we're combining their compartments to the early one. So in this case, we are metering out of tank 1, but using the capacity of 2 and 3 as well for all the same product. Now you can see in the background, if I hit that button, it's going to ask adjust tank capacities. You say yes. Tank volume, it goes through a summary just to make sure that you understand what you're doing. So it's saying you're combining 1, 2, and 3 for a combined capacity of 220 bushels of that product. Accept. It's going to ask you to fill the tank now. If you didn't actually fill the tank and you were just changing the seeder over, you can just say no for the time being. And then it's going to refer to tank 4, you doing 200024 in tank 4 at 230 bushels. Accept. Fill tank now, you can say no as well. And you'll notice in the background it grouped 3, 2 into 1, so those 2 and 3s aren't actually shown here anymore because they're essentially deactivated. They're just open capacity flowing into tank 1. So for the time being, we're going to put the grouping back to no grouping. It's going to ask again, just capacities. I'm just going to quickly accept these. And we have all 4 tanks up again. The tires, we have to tell it what model of tire is on this air seeder, as there are typically multiple options that can be selected. The reason we have to tell it which tires is so it understands the speed sensor on the rear axle appropriately and gives you the proper speed reading. Each tire has a certain size, and that is used in the calculation of the speed value. So in this case, my 6450 is going to have a 900 by 60 R32 R1 lug tire, and in order for that item to be saved, we actually have to hit the set button. Then it asks you for a confirmation, yes, it is okay to set that tire type. So then the wheel factor for that tire is automatically saved, so the speed value in this area that we mentioned earlier, it's going to calculate properly. Now, for simplicity's sake, we are going to jump to the Units tab on the options so that any of the values that we are putting in the right appropriate unit for the numbers that we are entering. So in North America, typically our area units are going to be acres, our length is going to be feet, our speed is going to be miles per hour, density typically pounds per cubic feet, usually because the fertilizer companies, when they deliver your product, are going to give you a slip, and that's actually what the fertilizer is going to be spec'd at, is a pounds per cubic foot value. Pressure, typically PSI. Volume, US gallons. That is to better match a liquid system like we are actually setting up for today. Weight in pounds. Lock NH3 calibration factor at pulses per pound. That is a simple on-off feature. Essentially what that is used for is if you have all of your other units in metric and the NH3 valves are stamped with the calibration factor from the United States in an imperial value, this will automatically consider that value as always being imperial if that checkbox is selected. NH3 mode capacity in units of N or not NH3. When that is selected, whenever you're talking a rate on the NH3 tank, you're talking actual nitrogen pounds, not product pounds. So if you would like to talk actual nitrogen, have that checkbox selected. So now we're going to jump back to the typical order of the options tab. So in review, we set up the machine. Now we're going to go to sections. What this does is it allows you to set up your anhydrous or liquid as a sectional control device. So we can essentially break up the machine into multiple sections. Now, when you are not using section control, enter number of sections in this input value, we would say 0. Then we enter the machine width in the seeder tab. So total width, I'm going to say a 55-foot machine. Now to jump back, if we were using sections, we are going to go to example of 6 sections. Now, in order to get the machine width in the system, we have to tell it how big those sections are. So in a lot of cases with liquid or anhydrous, it is a balanced system. So you're going to have the full width of your machine divided by the number of sections. So you can actually use this as a calculator as well as an input device. You can go 55 divided by 6 equals 9.16667. So then if we hit the enter button, it's going to use that value and set all of them at that number. So then we end up with a total width of 55, which is what we want. Below that, master switch is independent. Basically what that does is, if we had that selected, it would basically make the master switch